Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am Ken Bradshaw, School Superintendent for the Richmond County School System, and thank you for attending the 5th public hearing to discuss the Richmond County School System's Facility Master Plan. First, I would like to thank Principal Lambert and her team for hosting the meeting. Principal Lambert, you're here. Let's give her a round of applause. Secondly, I would like to recognize our school board members who are present. Please stand or wave to be recognized. And will the Richmond County School System Central Office staff and principals who are present please stand to be recognized. Why are we here today? This is the time of year when we review our portfolio of schools to see if we are maximizing program offerings and being fiscally responsible. I believe if we can do both, then student achievement can be accelerated. Therefore, we have partnered with an experienced educational consultant, a planner, to assist us with achieving this goal. While working with our planner, we have discovered a lot of information. The company is HPM, and our presenter is Mr. Tracy Richter. At the conclusion of this presentation, we hope you will be equipped with the information that we use before making a final recommendation to the Board of Education. At this point, I'm going to turn the program over briefly to our board president, Mr. Charlie Walker, to read a statement.
Thank you, Dr. Bradshaw. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. I'm kind of subbing in tonight, so before I start reading this legalese stuff that we have to do before or after the presentation is over, I do know that our question and answer session after Tracy does his presentation, we would ask that those parents and or folks that are directly involved with the Belair K-8 and the new middle school and elementary school have a first shot at asking questions. So if those folks want to jot your questions down, I believe there is somewhere in here some little form that you would fill out. It's not a form, it's just a little blurb about who you are and what you're asking about. But we'd like to give those parents and those people an opportunity first. If you've been to other meetings and you haven't had a chance to ask a question and you would like to, or you'd like to get some clarification on something, then we'd ask you to come in after them as well. But everybody has a chance to ask questions. We don't have a time frame on this. We are starting at 6 o'clock, but we have no end to it. So we want to hear as many comments and feedback as we can possibly get. So please feel free to fill out the form and bring it up to us, and we'll call you up at that appropriate time. So I am going to read just a quick thing about some decorum. Prior to our local Board of Education's decision to consolidate any existing schools where the consolidation results in students potentially being moved to another new or existing school, the Board of Education is required by law to hold public hearings and provide an opportunity for full discussion of the proposed plans, which is why we're here tonight. The plans that are being presented tonight are proposals only, are in draft form for the board to consider to vote on any plan. And I think you can see on the monitors here and on the big screen, it just says not final draft documents. The purpose of these public hearings is to provide the public an opportunity to learn more about the proposed projects, as well as for the public to provide feedback, comments, and concerns regarding the proposals, so the board members and school officials can consider these concerns prior to any vote. And we will have our vote on this just as an FYI, it's on our website as well, at our regular board meeting on March 19th. So that will be 1 week from tomorrow. 1 week from tomorrow, we'll have a committee meeting tomorrow, but none of this will come up then. But the proposal that we'll be presented with will be at the March 19th board meeting, and everybody's welcome to come down at the board at the main office. You will notice that there's also a court reporter present. I usually spot her. So, she's virtual tonight. She's usually right there. Who will be preparing a transcript of all the comments and concerns so that the board members can review all of the information at the conclusion of the hearings and prior to any votes taken on the plans. The board members and the school system personnel are here tonight to listen and receive feedback from the public. In order to receive as much feedback as possible within the allotted time, and again, there is no end time to this, the board members or the school system personnel will not be responding to comments during the meeting, but rather will be listening and receiving the points of discussion from the community. If you've got any specific information or that you need any specific information, there's some signs up, as you can see on the walls over here. So if there is something that doesn't get asked or you feel like you need to talk to somebody directly, after the Q&A, there will be school staff personnel available underneath those different headings should you have a question that you'd like to pose directly to them and have a discussion. For any specific questions regarding logistics of the proposed plan, such as transportation routes and special education services, school system officials are here tonight and will be happy to meet with you after the conclusion of the meeting in order to receive those specific questions. And again, just as a reminder, those will be over there at the different headings if you've got a specific question. And that is the conclusion of my little substitution here for Tracy. If you want to go right into it, well, glad to have you again here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. How are you? Good evening, everybody. Everybody hear me okay? This is good. I'm going to kind of stand over on this side to get a little feedback and try to stay out of that sun a little bit. So first of all, thanks for coming tonight. I know that you've probably watched some of this online. You might have even been to a meeting, but I'm glad you're here if you haven't. Because what we're going to take you through tonight is what we're trying to accomplish here is to look beyond just 1 year in this district from here on out. Obviously, we have to take actions for next year but we really want to try to see what this district is supposed to look like in the 5 and 10 year vision. And I think what that's going to do is it's going to make this district more sustainable from a facility standpoint. In the fact that instead of kind of waking up in August and wondering if your school doesn't have enough kids in it and is potentially going to be closed, we need to see a plan that's going to look at the portfolio of buildings for the next 5 and 10 years and kind of just shut down that nervousness over a year in and year out. And so what you're going to see tonight is a presentation about how we got to where we got to in the present time. Understanding that, and again, trying to make this very, very, very clear, that the board's ask on the 19th for a vote is only for any action that will happen next year. Nothing beyond that is on for a board vote. Actually, there's a lot more community conversations, school-based conversations that we're going to continue to have during the spring and the summer and the fall and have these ongoing so we can make really good decisions and understanding that we've already got a lot of great feedback and a lot of things to consider as we move forward in the next 5 and 10 years to see what those buildings will look like. So what this starts with is a video, and I'm going to show you a video that was put together to kind of show you an overview of some of the data things, and then I'm going to talk some specifics about how we got there and some data points that we got there. But what I want to be sure that everybody in this room knows is that the presentation can come across as very numbers oriented. But numbers aren't everything, and we understand that. Understand that this presentation and development of a facilities plan is rooted in programs and how programs get developed and how we can offer programs to our students. And that is very student-based. And to think about how we're serving our children and what types of programs our children have access to and currently what they don't have access to and why we have to be in this position sometimes. And then, so I'll take you through that. At the end of that, we're going to certainly be able to ask questions. And if you haven't seen it yet, although the board members do not respond, I respond if you have a question and you want it answered. I'm glad to answer anything I can when it comes to this facilities plan. And as many of you know, if I don't have that answer, I'll tell you I don't have that answer. Now, if it's an operational question, and there are some operational questions, again, like Mr. Walker said, there's going to be people from the district sitting in transportation, special education, teaching, learning, human resources. So if you have questions that you might not have to ask up there, but you want more specific, like if you're a teacher, that you want to know about, teacher assignment, or can I transfer over, or will we be transferred? You can get that question answered there. And so let me start with the video, and then I'll go into our presentation.
This is our home, Richmond County. We know its history, and we're invested in our future. These are the faces of tomorrow. Our kids deserve a chance to learn and grow in a community that cares. Our teachers are terrific. Our leaders work hard. And most importantly, our kids are filled with potential. Shouldn't we give them the best? But to do that, we must change. In the Georgia Milestones Assessment, Richmond County Schools ranked among the bottom 10 of the 180 public school systems in Georgia. Our aging buildings aren't able to keep up. Our children are not getting the education they deserve. Change is tough, but new beginnings make way for a better tomorrow, and that is worth it. In the past, we fell short, but we can do better, and we will. We can give our kids state-of-the-art buildings. We can offer them more teachers, staff, and programs. And the state of Georgia will pay for it. But first, we need to adopt a 10-year vision that brings more money into the district, using state funds we currently don't qualify for. Here's how it works. Georgia requires a minimum number of students in schools in order to get funding. Today, many of our schools do not meet the minimum enrollment required to maximize state funding. That means instead of all of these resources, they get just this. That's what we can offer the majority of kids in our district now. It's not enough. Our kids are missing out on the things that are proven to help them get ahead. If we keep the status quo, we're leaving free money on the table. We get less than other districts. Plus, we're forcing kids to learn in buildings that aren't up to par. But look at this. Here's what we can offer if we are willing to make changes. We have to consolidate. Right now, we have too many buildings and not enough students. Before the next school year, here's what we need to do. Open new Richmond Hill Elementary to help families in an area where more kids are moving. Opening a new Belair Middle School will also balance out classrooms. Building a new Langford Middle School means moving students to Tut. This paves the way for faster construction. We need to close Spirit Creek Middle School. The same is true at A. Bryan Mary Elementary School. The conditions in those buildings do not meet our students' needs. These recommendations came from the brightest minds in rebuilding school systems for tomorrow. HPM, informed by a community task force. Together, we created a master plan. By evaluating existing facilities, tracing population trends, finding ways to get more state funding, preserving history while advancing technology and career opportunities. Now HPM is leading community conversations because we can't ensure the future of our children without your help. This isn't easy, but we're going to do things to decrease the impact on our kids. First, we're going to keep as many students together as possible. We're also keeping teachers and staff. Next, not only are we offering brand new buildings to many students, but this will allow others to get much needed upgrades. All throughout the process, we made sure buses will be there. And finally, we're preserving history. We're working with staff and alumni to make sure that's not lost as we work toward a better future. These changes are painful, but here are the facts. Studies tracked test scores, grades, and attendance. They all improve when kids move to fully funded schools with better facilities and more programs. Bigger schools don't mean bigger classes. In fact, it means more art, music, and the ability to learn languages and participate in sports. This isn't just happening in Richmond County. It's everywhere. Families are having fewer kids. Our schools were built for more kids than we have. Old buildings have high maintenance costs. According to the Government Accountability Office, 97% of U.S. schools need security updates. 87% are desperate for better technology. Aging buildings impact housing too. Some neighborhoods which once served hundreds of kids will only have a handful. That's why 40% of our students don't stay in the neighborhood boundaries for high school. We need to adjust our school strategy to adapt to these changes. If not, our kids will only get left further behind. We can give our kids state-of-the-art buildings. We can offer them more teachers, staff, and programs. We can build a better foundation, offer world-class education, and ensure a better future. And the state of Georgia will help us pay for it. But first, we must change. Want to learn more about how this impacts your kids, your schools, and your neighborhood? Head to our website. There you can enter your address and see an interactive map showing the changes needed to ensure our kids keep up. This is just the first stepping stone to building a foundation for the future of a world-class education in Richmond County.
Okay, so when this is over, and again, we have George in the back. Hi, George. Glad you made it. He's going to help us out tonight after I'm done with my presentation. When we get to the comment, and he'll take you kind of through some rules of decorum for that. But let me give you some background here. Now, again, one of the things that when Dr. Bradshaw came to me last summer and he saw something that I was doing, and many of you might know this, but I do this nationally. I work with districts all over the country, not necessarily in school consolidation, but good school planning. Alignment of demographics to facilities, to the right types of facilities, to programs and to funding. And kind of that's my job, it's what I do. And so as you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts to that. Well, and Dr. Bradshaw came to me, he says, we go through this right sizing process, and I said, yeah, I kind of seen it. And it's pretty brutal, what you're going through, and I see it. And I said, there is a different approach, and an approach that should be taken when a district really looks further out, really says, okay, what is the impact of declining enrollment? What does that mean to our facilities? But what does that also mean when your taxpayers are funding over $200 million every 5 years to reinvest into buildings? But so that's a really common practice. School districts across the country have to adjust and adapt to their population demographics, building conditions, and funding. It's just a balance that school districts have to go to. If we could pick up really good buildings and put them to where populations are instead of where they've been, that'd be great, but we just can't do that. And so there's always constant reinvestment into facilities, and there should be. But in a declining enrollment world where, the excess of capacity leads to a lot of open schools, which leads to the stretching of resources, that means that our kids suffer because when you're stretching your resources thin, and teachers can tell you this, and administrators can tell you this, and principals can tell you this, is that when you can't get funding into a school, you can't get programs into a school. It's really that simple. There's not enough kids that walk into a door. You simply just can't get the dollars in there to get the programs that are necessary that your students need and want. And so, but the demographic issue is not necessarily a school performance issue all the time. It's not necessarily that, people just don't want to come to your district. This is happening everywhere. This is something that I've been showing everybody, and I think it's really important. That if you look back 10 years, the last 10 years in Richmond County, you can see that the county population has grown. Now, there's pockets of growth and there's pockets of decline like every other county has. But what's interesting is that over that same 10 years where the population's grown by 7,000, there are literally 400 less births happening. So I get 7,000 more, but I'm getting less and less kids being even born here. Okay, so now the baseline of how we're going to get kindergartners into school is that they have to be born. And when you have less kids being born, less kids show up. It's really simple math. But it's the baseline for every school district to start to measure where their population is going to be. Now, again, not that this makes anybody feel any better, but you're not alone here. This is going on everywhere across the country. And especially now post-COVID, we see these declining birth rates. And again, we're not anticipating kind of a change. I've not spoken to a demographer nationally that sees any sort of change in that. Now, if it does, it does. Now, the other thing is as you start to look at the enrollment too, even though with an increase of population, there's a steady decline of enrollment. Now, and then you see that actually the largest two grades that we see in the district, and largest three, are that 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So this should give us some indicator here. But if I look at the 2007, 2008 births, which are your 11th and 12th graders, which are those big classes moving through, you can see that in 07 there's almost 3,400 births, which means 900 more births with the senior class. Now, one last factor is that we've been talking about a lot is that even in the housing that we talk about. Now, out here in the west side, you kind of get some development out here, and there's housing going up. But it takes a lot of houses to replace those that aren't producing kids anymore. We talk about gentrification of population, school population, a lot in existing homes. But even gentrification of children in homes is starting to slow way down. And the reason for that is that people simply aren't, when they become empty nesters, people simply aren't moving out of their houses right now. And one more time, because this is the last time I'm going to say it, I'm the perfect example of this. 3 years ago, I had 2 kids in high school. Now my daughter's a sophomore in college. I don't have any kids. But my house is almost paid off at a 2.5% interest rate. And I could go out and try to downsize and get half the square footage for twice the price at 8% interest rate. But I'm better at math than that. So I'm not going to do it. And so literally 2 weeks ago, I'm talking to my superintendent. I'm saying, you're not getting a kid out of my house for a while. Which means, in where I'm from, that's about $9,000. That's $20,000 the school district isn't going to get anymore because of my kids walking in the door. And it's not going to happen for a while. Now, will that change? Obviously, it'll change. But now that we've got this low birth rate, non-gentrification, even in population growth, we're not seeing kids show up. On top of that, you have legislation in every state that fights public schools every day. In charters and vouchers and promoting the any way out of the public school you can. So all these factors working against public school, but we still have the same amount of facilities, which stretch our resources. So we spend a lot of time on this because this is important, which means that we're going to continue to see decline in enrollment simply due to the fact that demographics tells us that. If I look at historically at the district, and the grade I really want to look at, because if I want to do a 5 and 10 year plan, I want to look at that kindergarten class, and I know 10 years ago I had 2,671 kids, and now I have 2,186. I have 500 less kids in kindergarten than I did just 10 years ago. Now, if I push that through for the next 10 or 12 years, and nobody leaves, because you're not allowed to leave once you're here. If I just do that math, that's 6,000 less kids than today. So I've got this birth rate, I've got lower class sizes than I've ever had, I've got non-gentrification of homes. There's a lot working against if we're going to get more enrollment. So I get asked a lot, well, how do you stop the decline in enrollment? Or how do you I actually get asked a lot, how do you grow the enrollment again? Well, the first thing you have to do is stop the decline. You can't grow until you stop this decline. And so how do you stem that decline a little bit? Well, I think you do it through better program offerings and better quality schools. So kids will stay and fight all this demographic and programmatic stuff that we're facing. So with that, we kind of even looked at high schools, and I point this one out from the high school, even though this isn't a high school conversation. But if you look for the last almost 25, almost 30 years now, the district has declined in high school enrollment by 1,200. What's alarming is that it's only going to take another 5 years to go down another 1,000 because of that push through of enrollment. And so here I'm going to deal with 1,000 less high school students. And today, if I look at today you have roughly 12,150 seats at the high school level. Your projected enrollment in 5 years is going to be 7,500, which means I've got about 4,600 empty seats projected in this district just for high schools. Now, if you take the average size of your high schools, which is about 1,000, that's 4.5 high schools that are set empty, that you still have space for, that you pay for. And so trying to manage that space, along with that, I have to staff those buildings and stretch out my staffing and my resources. And it happens the same for elementary schools, and it happens the same for middle schools. And so on top of that, I have movement throughout the district. This one happens to be, and again, a little tough to see up here, but this is what we call live-attend analysis. And what we simply do is we look at where students live and where they attend schools. And we see transfer rates across. And if I look at like Belair, for instance, if I go across in the Belair K-8, right now, and this one's pretty good actually, I have 401 kids. If I go across, I have 401 students that actually live in the Belair K-8 boundary, in the middle school there. Of those, that next number, 73, that's how many students actually go somewhere else. Okay, now if I go down, there's about 47 kids that actually come into the boundary to attend schools, and you can see where they're from. 12 are from Glen Hills, 5 are from Hepzibah. So you can go down. But if you go across here and you can start to see that there's a lot of middle schools that a third of the kids don't even stay in their boundaries anymore. And so a question that you get asked a lot in planning is like, well, why don't we just adjust the boundaries so we can get the students in the schools? The problem is they're not even going to stay in the boundaries. A boundary process wouldn't do any good if 30 or 40% of your students don't even stay in the boundary. And so when I get to the high school level, and this gets a little worse, there's high schools that 40% of students don't stay in their high school boundary and they attend somewhere else. But I get this from the communities that we've got to hold on to tradition and legacy. I got 40% of high school kids that say legacy doesn't matter over program because they're leaving. They're going to another boundary school. They're not even just going to the magnets, they're going to other boundary schools. And so we can talk about those things, and we do talk very frankly and plainly about them. But I have a feeling that students don't stay in those buildings for a couple reasons. One being program offerings. They just can't get the programs, the AP courses, the career courses, the liberal arts courses that they could normally get in a fully funded high school. And so this number is, and again, so we look at it, and again, so this is our projected enrollment, and again, it really just comes down to, especially at the middle school is going to stay pretty stable for the next 5 years, but that's going to push through too. And again, if you look out that 5-6 year, which is all I want to predict, I don't want to go 10 years out because 10 years is tough to predict, but I know how many kids are being born this year. So if I go out that 5 or 6 years, that tells me 7,500 high school kids with no enrollment to support more than that, no birth rate to support more than that. And so I think that we can have a real frank conversation that the demographics are real, and declining enrollment due to demographics isn't a horrible thing. It's just something that the district has to react to, and not only the district has to react to, but you have to react to as a community. Again, which isn't easy to maintain as many buildings as this district does. And so when we talk about funding, we don't talk about facilities management, about cost savings. You know, closing buildings, readjusting buildings, realigning buildings isn't about cost savings because the district is going to spend those dollars somewhere else, okay? And so what it is about maximizing dollars in those buildings, and so we make those adjustments to maximize this because we talk about this triangle that districts have to deal in, and this is what makes every district unique. The fact is that people want diverse and robust programs in their schools. Absolutely, that's what we want for our kids. And that just doesn't mean, folks, that just doesn't mean like art and music. That means special education. That means career technical education. That does mean extracurricular stuff. Full programmatic delivery models, people want robust programs. But they also want the district to spend their money well and keep those operating costs low, but they also want to keep schools at a reasonable size. Now, the trick to any of this is that in this triangle, it's very difficult to achieve all three. You can achieve two at a time, and what I mean by that is that if you want diverse and robust program offerings and small school sizes, it's not cheap. It costs a lot of money. If you want low operating costs and diverse programs, you're not going to have smaller schools. And ultimately, if you have the low operating costs and small school sizes, you can't have all the programs that the kids need. And so the trick to any school district is what's your triangle look like? Right now, this district chooses high operating cost and small school size and jeopardized programs. That's not a triangle that most school districts want. And so a facilities plan is really about shaping that triangle to fit you, Richmond County, not APS, not Savannah Chatham, not Columbia County. It's to fit you. And what does it look like? And this is a really tough thing to balance, especially when we come from a singular school perspective. And look, I completely think that you should, when people come out to these meetings, they should be defending their schools, they should be fighting for their schools all day long. And it would be a really nice luxury to stand up here and say, I wish I could do that too, but I've got 28,000 students that I'm looking at to serve in fully funded programs also. And so is it about the individual student? Absolutely. Is it about the 28,500? Absolutely. So how do you address both? And how do you balance that among your facilities and your programs? And again, that's how you get to a facilities master plan. When you're looking at full funding for schools, basically what happens is that the state funds you for how many students that you have, and it basically gives you enough money to do fully funded schools like this. And so to say that you have a minimum funded program, I'm going to show you what a minimum funded program means. That means if your schools are this size that you could staff those buildings mostly with state funding. Now, I'm going to show you that the state doesn't even go that far with most people, okay? Because the state can't even afford all these programs. And so there are always going to be programs that the local communities pay for, and you're willing to do it because your kids need that. But in this case, high schools at the minimum funding at $970, middle schools at $640, and elementaries at $450. And to get fully funded, you can see what the numbers look like. At elementary school, it becomes unclear what really a fully funded program is because the state simply stops at a certain number. And so 16 of the 28 schools are currently, of the elementary schools, are below 450 enrollment. 16 of 28. 6 of 8 middle schools are below minimum funding standards. 4 of the 8 high schools are below minimum funding standards. Not full funding, minimum funding standards. And so if I look at the elementary school, if I get a fully funded one from the state, I do get a principal, a half nurse, guidance, and a media specialist, and they'll pay for one of the specialties. Now, locally, you'll pay for the rest. Now, if you do have more dollars walking in the door and you could get every school big, those will get fully funded. They certainly would, but if I go below that 450 number, look what happens. That's what happens under 450. And so what starts to happen in a school district is, and this makes a lot of sense if you think about it, those schools that are fully funded, that have enough students to get a building fully funded, that have full programs in it, well, if you want equity among programs among all schools, what you do is you start picking from those schools that are fully funded to make sure everybody else has funds to have equal programs. So in essence, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so those schools that can be fully funded then, their programs start to get minimized in order for others to get funded. Which basically means you cut down the fence enough for everybody to see over it. The only problem with it, it defeats the purpose of the fence. Think about it in a program sense. That if my student attended a school that had enough students to get fully funded and they couldn't get all the programs because there are schools left open that have 350 and 375 in them, how's that fair to your child? And so it's that 1 versus 28,500 about, yeah, I think every kid should get it. And I don't think you should cut down a fence to defeat the purpose of the fence. I think you should get all the programs up for your students. Now, at the middle school level, it even kind of gets a little worse. So at the minimum, that principal, assistant principal, and a nurse, guidance, art teacher, band teacher, PE, you don't get the world languages, you get the media specialist, but look at this. From an exploratory standpoint, you get very little from the exploratory world of middle school. Now, I spent 7 years teaching middle grades education before I got into this 25 years ago. And one thing I knew about elementary or middle school, and the one thing I loved about teaching middle school, not that I ever thought I would teach middle school, but when I did, what I loved about it was the idea that it was the exploratory time for students. It was a time for discovery to see what pathways high school could offer me. Your kids don't get that. There's no way they can get it from a funding standpoint. 6 of 8 are below that minimum funding standard. So the foundation of exploration for high school gets minimized because I can't get the programs in the middle schools to start to see that. Now, if I get to that full funding, look, I get at least that advanced world language, I get a health science, a junior ROTC, maybe a robotics, but I can also start to add some of these things in there that middle schoolers need for exploration. At the high school, it gets really scary because at minimum, now again, 4 of your 8, ideally a high school has 4 assistant principals, 1 for every grade level. Ideally, it has 4 guidance counselors to get in those buildings. Well, look, I got a nurse and 2 assistant principals, only 2 PE teachers, which again minimizes my opportunity for coaches. Art teacher, band teacher, but not really a choir teacher, and then my CTE gets limited also. Now, 4 of your 8 are below this minimum standard. This is a fully funded high school. Now that's 1,608 or 1,670 or something like that number. It's above that 1,600. But what we've come to realize is that we're not going to make 1,600 student station high schools in Richmond County. It's just too big a high school for this community, understandably. So what you have to get to is that, what can we get to? Can we get to a number that can get us closer to this at least? So we can lessen the burden on the local, get more state, and maximize our state dollars in those buildings? And the answer is yes. Can you get to 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 each of your boundary high schools? Absolutely. And keep your magnet programs also, because that's what you should do. Every district should have those strong magnet programs that you have, and they're going to stay. And so we need to make sure that we're getting closer to this, even though at the high school level we probably can't get all the way here. Now, the recommendations for the 24, so that's a baseline of how we got to where we got to, and again, there's a lot of stuff that goes in behind that. So if you go onto the website, you can see there's a background report, and the State of the Schools report shows you we've done a full housing analysis across the district, neighborhood by neighborhood. We've done the enrollment projections, we've done educational adequacy in facilities, we've monitored the buildings to see what the real capacity of buildings is. So we've got a lot of background work in this to come to where we got to. Now, what you're going to see here for the 24-25 school year is what we're going to ask the board for on the 19th. This is it. Nothing beyond this is what we're going to ask the board for to vote for on the 19th. Certainly we've seen some of those highlights on the film, like Richmond Hill Elementary and the Richmond Hill K-8 converting to the middle school. Here you've got kind of the opposite going on, that you're building a new middle school and the K-8 is going to convert to your elementary school. We've got Tut and Langford, a combination that will at first move the kids to Tut School building in order to minimize the construction time for the new middle school at the Langford site. Now, that impacts this community some because of how the boundaries will be situated and how the feeder patterns will work. And so in that, though, we also have some consolidation that starts to happen in Spirit Creek and in this case and A.B. Mary Elementary schools. Now, with those, the distribution in other schools will actually get those schools to closer to fully funded dollars in those schools that we can get to. Now, the other thing is that when you see, in this particular conversation, we're going to have, this is a really good news conversation because a lot of this community is going to see a brand new building out of this, and you're already in one of the newer buildings in the district. But in other cases, in consolidation, one of the things that we look at, and a lot what we look at, is that when we're making these decisions about, which unit development goes to, which planning unit development goes to what school, or, what buildings we will consolidate or that we intend to close at some point, that it's not just a look at saying, oh, we're just going to go to A.B. Mary and we're just going to close that. No, we did a comprehensive look at the area, the demographics, the housing, the transportation, the programs, all of it together, the facilities conditions, and eventually, in all of that kind of conversation, schools then come to the top for conversation in this. And so that's exactly how we got to the conversations around Spirit Creek, around Mary, and then further down the road, and I'll show you some of the more 5-year plans. But let me get into some examples now because I want you to see how this impacts this particular neighborhood. Oh gosh, that went fast. Okay, so the new Belair. So the first thing that you're going to see is you're going to see this, this kind of capacity number in here, and I think it's maybe a little clearer here, if you can see the TVs. But the capacity of the building is actually going to open at 800. However, there's another 12 classroom addition that's already going to be put on it. So it's going to be a building for 1,000. Now, the reason we put 800 is we're not sure exactly if that 12 classroom is going to be finished by the time school opens next year. It will be finished during the school year, but we wanted to be sure that we opened up. So it'll be actually 1,000 capacity. And then the second number you see is how many 6th through 8th grade students actually live in the boundary. And so there are 867 kids that live actually in the proposed boundary for the new Belair Middle School. Now, you might worry that that's a building that is over capacity, unless you go back and you see the Live Attend chart to see how many kids actually attend in there or go to other schools like magnet programs or choose another boundary school to go to, because that will happen. Now, not only that, is that in 4 short months you're going to have another 200 seats there, and so we've got even room for growth actually in the new middle school. And so we're not worried about that number being over at this point. We know that students are going to continue to transfer out of the boundary, go to Magnus, go to other boundary schools. So we're pretty comfortable with this, and especially knowing that 12 classroom addition is right around the corner. Now, here's kind of the details of it. You see these blue numbers on the screen. Those are what we call planning units. Those are those NPUs that we talk about. Now, even though on the map, and you have maps in the back that you can look at, remember that we have a tool that you can use in case you can't really see the line in there. And Matt's actually going to show you an example of that when I get to it so you can see how it really works. But basically what's going to happen is that the feeder patterns are also going to change, and this is why that Tut-Langford is a really important discussion, is that Copeland Elementary boundary is now going to be a direct feeder into Belair, 100% feeder. Now, the original thought was we would just do the rising grade up in and then let the 7th and 8th graders kind of stay where they are. But we actually think we're just going to move the entire middle school population that live in the Copeland boundary to the Belair. Okay, we think it's a better move for this in order to happen. Now, the new Belair Middle School then will be 100% fed from Belair, Copeland, and Reynolds Elementary. There won't be any split feeders at all. There won't be 10% of one school coming in or 10% going somewhere else. Okay, and so in the 2023-24 district-wide magnet enrollment from the proposed Belair, there's actually 133 students today that are attending magnets that are in this current boundary. So again, when I look at that 867, of those 133 are in magnet programs. And so again, we don't anticipate the school opening full, but that's intentional. We want to make sure there's some growth potential because we see growth on the west side. Okay? And then that 12 classroom addition will be completed during the year, again, getting that capacity just above 1,000. Now, Matt, I'm going to switch over really quickly, and I'm going to finish this presentation, but I want Matt to show you, stay right there so I can take people through it. If you want to see if your address is changing a boundary or how it's going to work, what you can do is you can go onto the district website, and then you can push on that. You see that tab that says 2024-25 Proposed Schools Zone Locator. You just press on that tab. You'll see this site. And at the top, you'll see that search. And Matt's just going to simply type in an address, and that address happens to be close to here. And what it'll do is it'll point specifically to where the address is, and it'll show you what planning unit it's in. And then you can see its current assignment in this one. I'm looking in the sun here, but its current enrollment elementary enrollment is Belair K-8, current middle school is Belair K-8, and current high school West Side. In this case, the proposed assignment will be Belair Elementary to Belair Middle to West Side High School. And so you can see where your proposed feeder pattern is and what school you'll be going to in the 24-25 year. And this is a tool that we'll keep up, that's accessible to everybody, and it gets updated every year in case we have to do any more changes every year. So this is a tool that you can use in order to minimize kind of any confusion on the new boundaries. Okay. And if you want, after the meeting too, when the meeting's over, we're happy to pull up your address if you want to see it before you leave. It also works on your phone. Okay, so this is where we want to talk a little bit about how you get impacted. This Tut-Langford is because of the Copeland boundary, this impacts what we're going to do. Again, the idea of moving Tut and Langford in together for a year allows us to clear the site at the Langford site, and in order to cut a full year off of construction, which as you can imagine is millions of dollars, and we get a new middle school sooner than later. And so the question was, as we went through planning, is do you leave the schools separated, knowing that they're going to combine anyway in time, and delay construction a year because you got to phase the project and have to spend more money, or because of the Copeland move out, we're going to minimize the enrollment that could happen at Tut and Langford in the combination, because we're going to move that to the Belair, and just get the Langford done sooner, saving taxpayers millions of dollars. You know, I say millions, but it's over $1 million to phase out projects like that. So it saves dollars and gets students in a brand new state-of-the-art middle school a year sooner. So that's why when the master plan was decided on for this year, we decided there. Again, the closing of Spirit Creek, and I'm not going to go through all these because these are online for you, and I've had these meetings with everybody, and they can show the results of the close of Spirit Creek. Also then see the same impact on Mary, and what the consolidation meant into those other buildings. And oftentimes, again, what it means by one school closing, and again, we don't like it to be any school, obviously, but by one school closing, 3 schools actually go up, at least have potential to get to that fully funded number. And that's a big deal, when before 3 of the 4 couldn't even get funded. That's a new Richmond Hill, a lot of the same situation that you guys are dealing with on this side of town. It's just a swap of they're building an elementary school, not a middle school. Now, the recommendations now beyond are something that we're talking about right now. And again, they're just for conversation, and they're just to start the conversation and the roadmap for where we could get to. Now, we've gotten a lot of feedback already. And again, and to a point where last week we met a couple times just to make sure that we're getting that feedback right and we're reevaluating what this will look like. But eventually, again, talking about a little more consolidation at the elementary school level with Gracewood and even in Jenkins White, but really starting to talk about our high schools. And the high school conversation is a little more difficult. Again, one of the things that we talked about a lot in this is that 12,150 seats for 7,500 kids. That's not a sustainable model for high school. And the enrollment numbers aren't sustainable either. But in order to get there, and again, this is just how we got there, and I want to be very, very clear, and I'm going to continue to be clear on this. Every magnet will still exist. I got a question today about does the standards of testing still exist? Well, that's an operational question, but yes, the standards of testing still exist. None of that's going to change. What we've talked about is facilities change, and the reason we've talked about that facilities change is in order to set the district up for reduction of high schools, but leaving as many high school buildings open as we can. In the context of one building, sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense, but in the context of the district as a whole, it takes more shape. Not that it's exactly the right shape right now, but that's why we have a 5-year plan, so we can look at this. But ultimately what this does is it looks at A.R. Johnson moving out to the RCTCM campus. And then in order to do that, we could move Murphy and Hornsby and combine those middle schools, again, operationally, one less middle school in the district. Getting over to that ARJ campus, which has an adjacency to Laney High School. Now, what it does is it strengthens, and again, the thought process behind this was it strengthens that Laney feeder pattern and also shares resources because they're on the same campus. That's a very difficult thing to do. How do you get AP courses down in the middle school, and how do you get advanced math, advanced sciences? Well, if your resources are on the same campus, it helps. And it gets a neighborhood school feeder a little stronger. Now, the thought then was that then you could move the current Josie High School students into the current Murphy building, which has plenty of room for them, and then do some selective demolition around Josie High School, and then build a new state-of-the-art, comprehensive career pathway high school. And so it'll be a district-wide pathway for a career school, but also be a comprehensive high school. Now, the difference in being a comprehensive high school is this, is that Josie would no longer have a feeder pattern because it'd be a district-wide choice school. The feeder pattern would now go into that that Murphy Hornsby Laney feeder pattern. Now, here's the other thing, is that we would leave the Josie boundary as a ghost boundary, like it would remain in perpetuity. And the point is that every student that always would live in that would have first access into the comprehensive Josie High School, which would remain at a neighborhood high school, but also have the career choice pathways and embolden career pathways. The district is working through a career vision, a career and technical vision right now on the heels of a Carl Vinson Institute study that they went through, a comprehensive vision of this, and it keeps Josie as a high school. And so ultimately then, with that, we talked about, in order to make it a more comprehensive site, that the C.T. Walker building, again, this is a lot of discussion. It is not, we don't have to take the C.T. Walker down, but in order to make it a more comprehensive site across for middle school and high school students, to move that Walker program over to the Tubman Education Center. And eventually then remove that building from the site in order to make that full comprehensive site. Again, we've had a lot of discussion on this one in particular, okay? And we're getting a lot of feedback on that we're gonna have more discussions on. And it's really good feedback that we're getting, and I appreciate it. Now, the next piece gets a little tougher because this talks about then the Glen Hills corridor. In the Glen Hills corridor, the goal would be then to look at our portfolio of elementaries and reinvest into our elementary and middle schools. Reducing the number of elementary school buildings, but not necessarily a big impact on the number of schools. So what it would do, it would go down from 4 elementaries to 3 elementaries, but replacing Barton Chapel and then eventually replacing Jamestown Road. Okay, it would be brand new school buildings in time. We would move the Glen Hills Elementary School over to the middle school campus with improvements to that facilities and adaptations for elementary. But what excites me sometimes about moving elementaries to middle school sites is that they have full gyms, they have theaters in them, they have science labs in them where students have resources to science labs that they don't have typically in elementary rooms. And you'll have the enrollment to be able to offer some of those more enhanced programs at elementary school. But in order to move those kids from the middle school to the high school site, the 5-year plan would be to then discontinue Glen Hills High School. Now, that's a tough ask, and we're going to have conversations. We have a meeting scheduled in a couple weeks with the Alumni Association to talk to them about how we got here, just how we got here. Okay, and so it's a conversation that we need to have. But in essence, what you see here then in a 5-year plan is really kind of a reduction of 8 of your middle schools down to about 5 operationally, and you actually you're operationally 2 less high schools, but only 1 less building in high school. And that's a pretty big move, and that gets more programs directed into it. Again, the board's they're not gonna vote on this. They're not looking at this right now. They're looking at that first piece. This is a conversation for a longer term plan. More spring conversations, summer conversations as we move into the fall, and how we move forward. So again, just some language on that, and again, some more maps that you can look at online that show some of those moves in there. Again, we're at the last outside the district office public meeting, and tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the central office, we're going to do a presentation just like this, and there's going to be public hearing tomorrow at the board office. A couple reasons behind, again, we've talked about why 3 p.m. Well, we've done 6 o'clock for everybody to come to for a week. This gives some opportunity for those who might not be able to make night meetings, but also the board has a business meeting after this tomorrow. No action taken tomorrow on the facilities plan at all. Tomorrow's just a regular board business meeting, and after the 3 o'clock. Okay, and then on the 19th it would vote for the 24-25 school year. Okay, so I know that's a lot to kind of consume. But we've been working on this, and there's a lot of information in there. And there's going to continue to be more information. Now, the goal of this is to not just have these conversations in the spring anymore, is to go through a continuous community update again, more in the spring, some in the summer. We'll let you take a little break, but come back fall. We want to have more community conversations because we have to. This is ongoing, and we want to continue to do that. And so that's it for me on the presentation point. George is going to come up and tell you how to kind of get to the microphone and kind of the order of the microphone. And then when we're done, we're done. And then if you want to stick around for anything in the specialized programs that you might have a question on, Matt is also happy to take you to an address match if you want to do that really quick on the computer. You can do that before you leave too. George, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good evening. So the first thing I wanted to make sure everybody was aware is, as Tracy mentioned earlier, if you look at the wall, you'll see transportation, special education, teaching and learning, human resources, and you'll also see maps surrounding those walls. Those maps will give you a street level view, and you'll also have central office staff at each of those locations to answer any specific programming questions. Now, as we open up the Q&A question part here, the first thing we want to focus on is anything that has to do with the presentation that we saw before us, and first prioritize any parents or any students that are at this school or affected from this change. So if you have any questions regarding this specific school or what's coming up, I'll ask you to go ahead and make your way up here. We'll have a comment card for you. You can fill that out. We do have a court reporter present today. They are virtual, so if you'll state your name clearly for the record so they can hear you and document that. And if there's nobody here that has any questions regarding this school or any of the changes that will affect the feeding patterns for this area? Yeah, go ahead and make your way up here, sir. And seems like he'll have the only question regarding this. And after that, what I'll ask is any folks that have any generic questions that have not spoken at a previous meeting, if you'll follow this gentleman and make your way up in the line. And then lastly, we will open up the floor for anybody that has asked questions before about any of the topics, if they want to jump in line and follow that young lady. As we get through this, the other thing I want to remind you is a couple of things. All of the meetings from the very get-go have been live streamed on the county's website. Same thing with the meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. That will be live streamed on the county website. Also, if you'd like to watch this meeting or any of the other meetings that we've had in its entirety from the beginning to the end, we'll ask you to go to YouTube, Next Era EDU, and you'll find all of these. To reiterate also the two most important dates coming up. So you can share them with your friends. You can post it on social media. You can take a picture of that right now if you want. The last public meeting will be tomorrow, March 12th. As Tracy said, the board will only be receiving this as information. The board will vote only on the 2024-2025 school year at the March 19th meeting at 6 p.m. So just so we have all that clear, and as you'd like to come up, please state your name, and then we'll keep moving. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Sonia Smith Jefferson, and I have grandchildren that are attending Sue Reynolds, and I think they're going to feed into this school.
They are.
And so my concern was with the staffing, if we're understaffed at this present time with combining all the schools together, how does that affect the staffing and the busing? Have we figured that out as well? Because I didn't hear anything about that.
Yeah, so there is a lot. It's an excellent question. So first of all, staffing is, this is going to be a building that has enough to get fully funded. And that's a great thing to happen. Now, to say that it's going to have everything right away is tough because I got other schools that are going to pull away from you. The goal of the plan is overall to balance staffing the right way. So you have the full staffing at every building. And I'm full transparency, it's a small rudder. It'll take a minute to get there, but that's why we got this 5-year to try to get there, okay? So the staff will move accordingly, okay? And and I think I would love to see full fund stay at a building. So that's number one. Transportation has been thought of. One of the reasons that we thought about those planning units, so transportation has been in all of our meetings, okay? Making sure that to minimize that transportation time. This district has struggled with on-time buses and things like that a lot because they're stretched so thin with so many buildings.
We have those issues now, especially at the beginning of school. Also, another question I had, you were saying that even when we do combine everything together, you also stated that we were still going to fall underneath what we needed to actually be fully funded. And I understand that as well. So, I don't know how enroll, because the only way I can see that we get more enrollment is more children be born, and you can't make people have babies. I
know we're at the mercy of that.
Everybody's just like, hold up, let's just take care of the kids we got.
That's right.
Yeah, we don't care about that part. So.
Yeah, well, I do think so. The goal is that if we can so ideally we'd like every one of our elementary schools to be ideally, and it could be more than that, but 4 teaching units per grade level. That allows us to have full-time media. It gets us a full-time one specialty. But again, local dollars typically take care of our other music programs. So you always have art and music in a class in the elementary schools. What we want to make sure of is that if you maximize the state dollars in there. So what happens, and just bear with me just 1 second.
Okay.
So the state knows how many enrollment that you have. They know how many nurses that's going to pay for, how many media specialists, how many art teachers, music teachers. Now, if I have to keep more schools open than the school fund, that's how that works. And so that's why building schools to the size we want to build them to is key to making sure that we get all the state dollars in the building first before your local dollars come in.
Right, because the math teacher thing, I showed up, I had a math teacher for 2 weeks.
That's got to stop. That's got to stop. Yeah, great questions. Thanks for that.
As the next question makes their way up here, one of the things I also wanted to reiterate, if you will visit RCBOE.org, there you will find all of the official information that you can hold the board accountable for, that gives you the specific plan. If it's not on that website, if you didn't get it from that source, I promise you it's not official. RCBOE.org. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Kalila Wright. My son is actually a student here
Okay.
at Belair K-8. And one of the questions that I had is, where are we getting these numbers about the children and the population? Are we actually taking into accountability as to how our area is actually growing? Like, you know, with the NSA building and Fort Gordon itself with the growth that we have. How are we getting that information to go ahead and see how many children will be moving in?
Okay, so the first thing, that information actually comes from OASIS. It's the official demographic website of the state of Georgia, okay? Now, we also do neighborhood analysis. So if you go to our background report, we can show you the student yield of every area in the district too. And so we're able to track even student yield out of households now. And so we can track to see if neighborhoods are growing in their yield, like more kids coming out of their house than not, and we can track it year by year. And so what we haven't had before is kind of this annual tracking of all this data pieces together. Now, to your point, there are pockets of growth, and we know those because we've done the housing analysis. One of the reasons that we've built a little extra space in some of the schools where we have and not filled them up is to account for some of that growth. Now, here's the thing is that from a district-wide perspective, though, there's nothing that, I mean, literally nothing. Even we saw it. 7,000 people have come here in the last 10 years, and we still have less kids and we still have less births. And so it's going to take some turnaround from the population type that comes in. It's going to take some gentrification of our homes, which I think will happen in time. I don't think this is a permanent thing. Eventually, I'm not going to live in my house. It's too big, okay? So that's going to happen. But we need to keep our eye on it. Again, one of the reasons for creating a more longer-term plan is so we can pivot when we need to make those adjustments when we need to, and to keep enough capacity in these buildings to adjust. So the plan isn't to go down to our bare minimum. It's to leave some space in there for any fluctuations that happen in time.
Okay.
And so I love your question about how to track it. We are we're specific to the county data, the housing data. So we have all that now, and now we have it all together. That's more key. We have it all together instead of piece by piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought I heard, what was the date that the Belair Middle School is supposed to be opening?
So
do we
it'll
have-
open in August.
In August,
Okay,
okay.
it's going to open in August. Now the 12 classroom
But you
edition.
won't have
Yeah,
all-
it's not quite finished yet, but even when they're building it, the kids will be safe and all that. So I want to be sure. And even afterwards, so there's some renderings over here, and Jeff in the back, he's waving right there. He can even walk you through to show you how that's going to work.
Okay.
Yeah, great question on that. It'll open in August though.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Good evening.
Good
My name
evening.
is Brian Wiley.
Hi, Brian.
My specific question is pertaining to C.T. Walker and A.R. Johnson. Those are two fully magnet schools.
Sure.
When those schools, especially for C.T. Walker, with it being closed down, will the schools when they go to TUT, would that be a fully magnet school, or would they be blended with public school?
No, absolutely. It would remain a fully, now again, if the move even happens,
Yes.
the C.T. Walker program is always going to remain. So a full magnet, the test magnet, all the operation of it will stay exactly the same. Staffing, administration. The goal is not to get, the program is to stay intact. The building we're still going to have discussion on. The other day we went out and met with some of the folks there. We talked about how the community impacts the school and things like that. So I think we got some more discussion on C.T. Walker. But don't mistake, C.T. Walker's not going away. Full magnet, the test in, all the operational staffing is going to stay the same.
And with their environment, because those magnet kids, with their environment stay the same?
Absolutely, absolutely. The goal
Okay.
isn't to get away, the magnet programs are strong and they're good for districts. And so our goal is to make the neighborhood school strong too.
Yes, sir.
And so we want to rise those up too. So not doing anything with the program as far as that's concerned.
Okay. And my next question would be about middle school for the magnet kids. What would be done about that?
So the magnet, so currently, well, you got the three magnets, the choice schools, choice and magnet,
Yes.
at our 612. That's going to remain. We're going to keep that intact because that feeder in is important. And again, when we're looking at the operation of our middle schools, it's okay to keep those kids in the magnet programs and keep our middle schools at the size we want them. Again, we don't want our middle schools so big that they're unrecognizable. And I think people concern themselves with middle school buildings. It's the natural environment of middle schools, right? So we want to control those numbers a little bit more, and magnets help us control even neighborhood numbers. And so it's always a balance for us. But the goal is to keep the 6 through 12 pathway in magnets also. Do nothing with those programs, keep them the same, keep the way you enter the same, all of that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
I
sir.
appreciate the question.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
so much.
Hello. My name is LaShondra Robinson, for the record. I have a few questions
Okay.
for you.
Yeah.
First, I wanted to ask, have you all taken in consideration that although birth rates have increased from 10 or 5 years ago, the homeschool population has doubled? And so, do the numbers of childbirths decreasing really have an impact if we still have the number of children here in Georgia, because it has doubled from 5 years ago?
So it's interesting to see those numbers come across. Even here, the percentage of student population in homeschools, even if you brought them all back, we would still have the space in our schools for them. The birth rates kind of stay the same. I mean, I think that the increase of population and the states that we've seen it, Georgia's one, Florida obviously, Texas has seen also. But what we're seeing is, first of all, we're seeing families that have moved that are either in later school, public school or K-12 world, or they're beyond it. And so the movement is actually, the growth is an older population too. We are tracking it. And we have homeschool enrollment. We do have, Georgia is fortunate enough we can get parochial school enrollment. There's states we can't get parochial school. So we can track those enrollments to make sure that either those percentages are staying the same, or if we're going to get return from that, what that number could be. But be rest assured that we have enough space in case that does happen. Typically what will happen, and again, I say typically because you just never know, that those in homeschool, their first choice if they're going to go into an environment for school is not the public school. They're going to probably seek either the magnet or a parochial alternative before they go into it. That's typically what we see, although there are kids that do come into the public school, and we're glad to have them. So we are watching it, and we'll continue to watch it. And again, I want to keep saying this. The good news is we're putting all the data together now, instead of just one piece of information here and another piece here. We're watching all of it to make sure that we're okay. I love the question about homeschool and all that too.
So in reference to that, I know you talked about having more specialized programs, but the difference in magnet schools is not so much focus on the specialized programs. It also meets the academic need of certain students who need that academic challenge. And so how is this going? I know we're talking about state-of-the-art facilities, but what about the quality of the staffing and the programs in the facility?
So, and I've said this a lot throughout this, my role here is to make sure you have the appropriate facilities for the staff to teach in. The right program spaces, the right amount of spaces, and the right amount of spaces from both ends, that you have the right amount of space in the school, but you also have it at the district level. Here's what I can't do. I can't hire the principal, I can't hire the staff, obviously. And that makes a difference in your school buildings. Direct instruction in the classroom has one of the largest impacts on educational attainment that research shows. We need quality staff in there. The problem that we have right now is that even in our quality staff, we're stretched so thin that even at the middle school, to get our more certified teachers at the middle grades level, our certified middle school teachers are spread so thin that it's harder to mentor those teachers to get to certification. And that's what we want to do. So I feel like one way to improve the staffing and the quality of staff is, first and foremost, quality facilities. You want to teach in a nice, when you go to your office for work, you want to go to a nice office to work. Teachers kind of demand the same thing. They want a nice place to work. I think that's one part. The other part is I think they should have enough team around them that they're not stretched so thin that they're either getting class sizes that are too big because there's not enough staff in there. And make that point is that the size of the school has no relationship to class size. We're going to make sure the capacity is right for a number of kids that's supposed to be in that building. But if you have the right amount of staff, it only makes the staff better. And so when I talked, for instance, about 4 teachers at the elementary grade level per unit, per grade level, like, that'd be awesome to have, because there are different specialties every teacher brings to it, and students have different opportunities with different teachers. We may not, you and I might not align in the classroom together as a student and teacher, but I got more opportunities for them to go to classes where they might align better. So there's a lot that goes to it, but facilities is only one way to do it. I can't get to the final answer that I think we all want. I can't guarantee that it will. What I can do is I can get you to a facility standard that allows them to have the opportunity to. And that's my role here. And so I would like community members, as we continue to talk over this the next 5 years, to keep asking that question, because I think that's the accountable question. Are we getting the right teachers here? Are we keeping the teachers here? Are we attracting new teachers here? Because I think it matters.
Okay, thank you. What is the ultimate purpose of these public community meetings? Because although that the information you all receive as a board before you vote next week, you all, or correct me if I'm wrong, you all have made the decision to move forward, but you are taking in this information to make, I guess, a better vote. But if there is a delay in what your plans are going to be, the plans are still going to move forward regardless of the information collected in these community meetings.
So well, you asked some really good questions tonight, because they're good clarifying questions for us. So first and foremost, the board doesn't have to vote on, for instance, like the closures. They can vote not to close schools based on all the feedback that they've heard. If they're hearing enough of that, they can decide not to. I think on the new construction ones, that in order to move those planning units in, they become very informative for that. And I think the board's still going to ask questions about, okay, you're moving like an entire Copeland. Do you really have to move the entire Copeland, or would you split it or something? So they could ask questions like that in order to modify some of those, like the new construction ones that we're doing. But the board still has ample opportunity to say no on closure. And so I think that's their decision. Part of why we come to community meetings, first of all, if the law says that we have to, first of all. But the law says we only have to do 2. We're doing 6. And I actually met at lunch a couple times last week, too, to make sure that we got more in. But part of that is to try to do that. The other part for me is just complete transparency. We had our first community meeting in December. We didn't have many people show up to that, but I don't think people are understanding what our process is yet. We're going to continue to have these community meetings regardless if there's anything on the board vote, because I do think we need to have more communication of how our facilities are from the community. So you're right. It's not, but it isn't finished. The board can say, no, we're not doing it. That's up to them, not up to me. I can just show them what we're proposing and why we're proposing it. So that's my goal.
When are the meetings, when are the minutes? Is it released to the public? Do you all just send an email within yourselves? When will we know about the final vote?
Okay, so the minutes, I don't know, the minutes get released, I got to know, like, they're getting like almost immediately. So they'll get the minutes from last week's like right away. That's why we have a court reporter doing the transcripts for them. So they're going to get even this meeting very quickly, just as quickly as the court reporter can turn it around. Now, it's all public record when the board gets, so you get that. Everything that we've done is online. Our background reports, all the data that we see is all online too, so you can see what we've used even. The board vote is the 19th, and that's when they'll make a vote for next year's only. So that's when you can see that vote. The transcripts, if you wait till after the meeting, maybe I can get some more clarification to see exactly when they are, because I don't know. I know that last week's are already done. I mean, but I don't know if they're going to wait on tonight and give them all together, and they're going to turn that around quickly for the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Terry Goodman, and this is my husband, Daniel Goodman.
Hi, Terry and Daniel.
So we have a daughter who attends this school, but
Okay.
we have 3 who attend RCTCM,
Okay.
and our daughter who attends here will be at TCM next year. So we were wondering if you could walk us through the process of change for RCTCM.
Okay, so right now there's no real change to the program. Actually, in time though, TCM will look different. And the goal is, I mean, in the plan right now, again, nothing set in stone. The plan would basically to almost, and I'm not going to say dissolve TCM, because parts of that program will always be there, but we're just going to make it bigger and better and it would be essentially relocated to the Josie site as a district-wide program.
So not to cut across you, so
No, that's
you're
fine. No,
saying
you're
that
fine.
it won't be
It'll
a
s-
magnet school anymore?
No, it still will be. It'll be a choice magnet program to get in, but more into that career focus. And so,
But will it just be TCM students, or will it also be the Josie students?
Josie students will have choice into that also, because Josie will have a comprehensive school there too. So the goal at the Josie program would be that the neighborhood, like because it's going to be a choice high school, but it's going to be a comprehensive high school. Students can choose the pathways they want, but have access into some programs. The magnet won't, the choice won't go away for the TCM program. That's where you are going to still be kind of in that magnet essence. Okay, so any student that leaves their boundary is a magnet student, because that's where they'll be. I know that's a little unclear, but let me tell you why it's unclear. And the reason for it, there's some program development about what has to go on in order to evolve. Eventually, RCTCM was going to evolve anyway, to be bolder and stronger. And so we've got some curriculum questions to ask before we make any moves. And the reason, again, we're not making the move right away is to come out and have these conversations with you as a staff and as a community. So we're going to do that with the RCTCM community also, okay? And we'll have some clear answers programmatically as we finish up, as the district looks at this district-wide vision for career and technical education and magnet programs, and where there's any integration, because there has to be some integration too. We want state-of-the-art career pathways that are magnets also. And so it's not going away. We just think it's going to look different. Okay?
So in comparison to A.R. Johnson, because I believe the
Yeah.
man earlier, he asked about that
Yeah.
school, and you said it's going to be fully functioning, those students are going to be
Yeah,
by
that's gonna-
themselves.
yeah.
But TCM won't look that way.
It won't, but it's I'm going to say that what I would say, the core of it's still going to be the same. Like it's into that high tech, into that, the pathways that they're going to.
I guess the reason why I'm slightly frustrated is
I can
because,
understand.
I'm sending my children
Sure.
to the magnet school
Sure.
so that they can be at a magnet school.
Right.
So, but what I'm gathering from you is that eventually TCM is going to be more of a comprehensive high school, or a part of that comprehensive high school, so it won't just be TCM students. It's going to be all Josie students and TCM
It's
students.
it's going to be district-wide students. And
So it
then-
won't just be
yeah,
TCM.
No, no, it'll be district-wide students. And again, the pathway, the balance was this, is that the Josie students don't have to go into the pathways for career ed. The idea is that TCM would have more access to more programs that they could go into on top of the magnet, okay? So it could bolster the program. Again, there's a lot of definition that has to go into it. And so I know that's frustrating as a TCM parent right now.
Yes.
And I apologize for that.
Because we are vested, as
Yeah,
you can
no,
see,
and you're-
we're about to
but-
have a fourth
but the-
child go
yeah,
there.
yep.
So, but my thought process is, well, if it's no longer going to have that same just TCM, so then, will we still have that option of sending our children to one of the other magnet schools?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is that option still going to be there?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
Davidson and A.R. Johnson will still be just Davidson and A.R. Johnson students, but
yeah.
TCM will be more collaborative.
It'll
Is
be
that
more
correct?
collaborative school and more
Okay.
opportunity. And it'll be a bigger and bolder program for more pathways for
And
TCM
how
kids.
did we get to that conclusion?
So again, part of the larger discussion around keeping as many high school facilities open and being able to move programs to adapt to that. So ultimately, you don't have two neighborhood high schools in the 5-year plan.
But I'm
Right
just
now.
speaking of TCM specifically as a magnet school, because
Yeah.
as you know, our children go through a testing
Sure.
process
That'd
to
still
get
do-
into school.
Would still do that. Would do that. We want to make sure that students in the Josie pathway do have access to programs that they might not necessarily think they have pathways to also. So I think that happens. And so in essence, we're trying to get a balance of both. The magnet's not
With
going away.
adding TCM, RCTCM
Yeah,
into that mix.
Yeah. And still have pathways for TCM, but also have the comprehensive school. And then it's called kind of we see magnet schools and comprehensive schools all the time in the country.
Okay. But as we know it today, we can know that eventually TCM is not going to be what we know as TCM, because I have one in 12th, I have one in 9th, I have one in 6th, and I have one in 5th. So by the time, which grade am I looking at to know when that change is going to occur?
So we would be, and so if you think about kind of timing, if you think about, and again, I'm not going to say this is all in stone. So we've got a lot of discussions to have and some alterations to even our conversation tonight. Just understand that will happen. This has to be pliable. that even if we moved the next year, we would have a year of design and 2 years of construction at a Josie site. Okay, and so we would be 3 or 4 years out before that, because we have to do the construction at Josie to get it done, and we have to clear the space off. And so we've got time for construction, design, all that. So it's a 3 or 4 year plan out anyway, as we see it. And then, and again, depends on if it did go forward even. I think this board has taken a really close look at this because they see the importance of this. So I'm thinking even if the decision got made, it'd be 4 years out.
So the decision for RCTCM to be a comprehensive high school is going to be 4 years from now?
It would be implemented in that 4th year.
Implemented in 4
Yeah,
years, but the
because, yeah.
decision will be made at what point?
It wouldn't be made until we have this more holistic discussion around ARJ moving, and then, so because that's a big discussion here, again, in the
Yeah,
context.
it is, because it makes you think, well, do I want to stay where I'm
Absolutely.
living? Do I
Yep.
want to move so my kids can be in the high school that I
Yep.
want them
Yep.
to be in?
Yep.
So most definitely. So you said the implementation will be 4 years from now. So am I looking at the decision to be made within the next 1 to 2 years?
So I think that if we were to start the ball rolling, like I think what has to happen is that we have to make a decision on how Josie is situated, and even how to get the Murphy, because we need the Murphy Middle School building to accommodate that high school curriculum class, the class side of it. And so there's some discussion around exactly that you can't, it almost ties all together. And if the decision goes, and it very well could go, that this board said, we're just not gonna, let's just say we're not gonna make the move of ARJ. Well, we have to go back and think about that then, because then what do you do? And because that kind of starts it all. And then, do we still exist in a 3 magnet program that when we've got too much high school stuff going on? So it's a balance of both. And so what I'm telling you is that one of the reasons, and you don't have to wait 4 years for this, we're going to have this discussion starting this spring with exactly your community to talk about these ideas about how this does evolve. Okay? We want you to be assured that the core of that program will always remain, and it'll always be that magnet choice.
But it's going to look different.
And
I know me personally, I'm not alone. You've seen your kids still
understand.
magnet school for that reason.
Yeah.
But this will be my final question.
Okay.
So with TCM becoming a comprehensive high school with a magnet field, will there be an expansion of A.R. Johnson and Davidson? Will they let more students in? Because I'm sure I'm not the only parent who's not going to be happy with that change.
Yeah, no question. So I think in the past, the district has made a decision when those programs happen, they just take them into the other programs. Now, again, there's testing requirements and admittance requirements that does happen. I do think that in a larger facility, magnet programs are dictated by the program capacity staffing-wise. That if the district chooses, from an operational standpoint, to extend the program, it is based on a programmatic capacity that they can handle, not a building capacity. And so if that were the case, and they wanted to remain opportunity, the board would make that decision to go ahead and expand those programs to make sure that we weren't lessening the magnet offering in the district. And I would suppose, my gut would tell me that a board would make that decision because they want to keep the magnet program strong. And so, but that's an operational decision that they'll make, but it's limited on your programmability. Okay, there's only so many students that a program can handle from a staffing and specialty standpoint. And so, but you want to maintain those RCTCM teachers out there too. And they feed perfectly into this magnet concept. And so, could you expand? Absolutely, you could. But there's an operational question that has to be answered there. I don't think the board has any intent to shrink the magnet offering from a population standpoint.
But they are looking to change,
Well,
yeah.
look, I think any program will change. I think if they don't, they're falling behind. I think RCTC will get more programs into it as we go, and more pathways. And so I think that there's going to be a little bit of that discussion that has to happen. Where do these, and again, the magnets are their own special kind of discussion to have, and that's a good thing to have. But we also have to remember that there are neighborhood schools that are important too. And you guys know that. I'm sure you do know
Yeah,
that.
we-
You send
we
your kids to
agree.
neighborhood
We-
schools
we
too.
definitely agree with that,
Yeah.
but.
And so
Yeah,
it's,
I
it's-
mean, I appreciate your time
Okay.
because I don't want
No,
to
that's
hold
fine.
up anyone else. But yeah, we'll definitely keep track because it is a concern
Absolutely,
of ours.
and we'll be out and talking
so
to you,
that
I
we can know
promise you
how
that.
we can make our decisions
I
moving
promise you
forward.
that we're going to be out talking to you guys soon, okay?
Yeah, and we'll be on the watch.
I appreciate that.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming tonight.
My name's Holly Livingston,
Holly.
and I wanted to talk a little bit about your special education.
Sure.
I didn't hear very much on it. My special education child is going to a high school that doesn't have the program, so
Yep.
he's going to be fed into a general,
Yep.
which to me doesn't help him educationally wise. Like, he's already been started this week
Yep.
where they fed him into the general, and for the first time ever, he flat out told me he hated school.
Oh, no.
This is a child who loves and cherishes his teachers.
Yeah.
But how, if he's starting this right now, how is high school going to be?
Well, see, this is exactly the point. This is exactly the point, is that I'm going to take you back last week to when we were at Mary Elementary School. I had a parent there, a mom, who has a special, and as a special needs student and then a regular ed student, right? She was at Warren Road, but because they couldn't offer the special ed program, she got transferred out to have to go to Mary. Now, she loves Mary. She loves the teacher there. But she didn't have a choice to stay in her neighborhood school anymore. And the point of this plan is exactly what you just talked about, is that your son can't get the program that he specifically needs because we're stretched so thin across the board, and we can't put special education everywhere we need it. Now, I wish I could tell you that would change tomorrow for the high schools, but you already see there's a 5-year plan for high schools because nobody wants to close a high school around here in order to make sure that your student gets that.
Yeah.
We want to keep all these buildings open, which is going to result in stretched programs, which means we can't have the programs everywhere we want. There's one high school that only has 2 AP courses in it, let alone special ed. And so that's kind of the point here, is that when people hear about robust programs and things like that, I think in their head they think like art and music.
Yeah.
I
Special
think
education program has
that's-
been forgotten about. And
That's where I'm with you on this one.
I've been the biggest advocate, even in the school,
Good.
for special education children, because they are forgotten about. Like
Right.
at a field trip where my son wasn't in general, so they told him to go back to his class, and he actually didn't get lunch because they only gave it to the 8th graders that were in general. They didn't accommodate for the special education kids that were there
Okay.
that are now in their own classrooms.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
operationally, it's just a mess. It's an absolute mess. And I think, again, that's the point. I mean, I think people hear and are concerned about their facilities so much that they don't hear that story.
Yeah.
And that's the story that needs told because that's real, and that's what we're trying to fix. But you have to do that by, first of all, getting your house in order. And the house isn't in order because we have too big a house, which means we can't get the special ed teachers grouped together, paired like we need to, because they're just stretched thin if we're going to try to get them everywhere. I wish I had a better answer for you. I wish it could be tomorrow to help that. But you are an advocate. You need to keep coming to facilities meetings along with those curriculum meetings to make sure that we get to the facilities that accommodate even your
Because I
son.
know I'm not
Yeah.
alone
You're
in
not.
having a special
You're not.
education child.
You're not.
And it's one of those things where they're not talked about at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem like there's the right programs put in place. Like I said, he's about to go into a high school that doesn't have one at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried
So
about.
him being a level 2 autistic with other disabilities,
Yep,
I mean, I'm scared for his future.
understandable. And, well, and again, so that tells me that you're a parent that doesn't have a choice.
No.
Well, I'm sorry for that. Everybody wants their choice and then don't realize that there are parents who don't have choices because of this situation. Now, here's what I will tell you. Even though you didn't hear a lot about it in the conversation, you see that it's the only program that's actually listed up there. And that's on purpose, is because I think there's some things that we can be doing in this.
Yes.
And
there
so
needs to be a lot done.
I don't disagree with you at all.
Because there's more and more children that are getting later diagnosis.
Yep.
I
Yep.
fought very hard. Mine wasn't diagnosed. It was 9.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't feel, I had to fight for 2 years just to get him put into the IEP program.
Sure.
Which he should have been able to get into, but there wasn't an IEP program when I was originally fighting for him to get the amenities that he needed.
Right, right. Got to get this house in order. And
So I am glad
you-
to see that
yeah.
it was there and that there is something. I just didn't hear anything in the
Okay.
meeting, so I wanted to make sure what are the plans moving forward.
Keep moving forward then. Okay, keep coming up to these, because what we're trying to do is again, get these buildings to fully funded so we can have the special education in them. Okay?
All right.
So that's a goal in the facilities. And programs mean special education too.
All right, well, thank you.
Keep
Because I
coming.
mean, I love the extracurriculars, but
Oh, yeah.
I would rather my child get a fully educational program
That's one.
than for him to play in robotics.
Absolutely. And we appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Keep coming to these. Keep having your voice heard at this. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name's Anita Boehner.
Hi,
I've been to a previous meeting at Spirit Creek, and
Mm-hmm.
I also looked at a live video at Tut. I was just concerned, because I'm also an RCTCM parent, but it's confusing because in the last meeting at Spirit Creek, you said RCTCM wasn't a magnet school. You kept saying choice.
and I apologize.
But choice and
yeah.
magnet school is totally different.
I know, and I'm going to apologize for that. Sometimes in my vernacular, in education, choice is sometimes magnet in across the board. So what I'm saying is that people make the choice to go in that building. That was my fault, and I apologize for that.
And it's not really a choice. You have to test into it.
have to test it, right.
Because you might not get accepted, so it's not really a choice.
Yeah.
It's a choice to take the test.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it's not a choice. But the choice schools is like when my son was in elementary school, I didn't like the school he was at, so I had a choice to pick another one, and you have to go to the board to get approval.
You do.
And you have a choice to go to a different school.
Right.
But I know some schools, I mean, they move around teachers, they move
Mm-hmm.
around principals. Sometimes that school is wonderful, but when they move certain staff members, the whole school
It changes it.
changes.
Yeah, no question.
And my thing
So
about
my apologize for that. I will,
Yes.
and I didn't mean to interchange the words like I did, and I've been trying to make sure I got it right from that meeting. So I appreciate you pointing it out. Though.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Also with RCTCM, why are we the only school that's being moved with a choice school? Because A.R. Johnson, Davidson, they're remaining the same. I mean, why
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A.R. Johnson and RCTCM remain in the same building?
Yeah.
Because also at the other meeting, you said kids that lived around Josie, they still would be able to go to that school.
So we should think about that. I mean, I think that that's one thing we need to think about in a curriculum development piece, is that can they still exist in the same building, or is there the right spaces for both programs to exist in the building? So again, part of our discussion as we move forward, we just need to put a roadmap out so we can have these deeper discussions, exactly what you're asking. Because I think that we need to explore that. Like I would, if I could figure out a way to minimize that move, I would. I'm just trying to figure out how to balance keeping high schools, as many high schools as I can, along with the magnet programs and keeping those strong.
But why RCTCM?
Well, I think that that's part of the bigger picture.
Like,
is
how did
that-
they choose that? Like,
Well, it's
how-
not, and it's not really a choice, because remember that trying to figure out how those programs can work together also, and how those students can be part of an ARJ or vice versa, is part of a larger curriculum discussion I think we should have to broaden the magnet, to make the magnet stronger. That's the goal. Now, part of it will be, again, RCTCM, and again, because it's more of a curriculum discussion about how that is at Josie in the future. And again, is it even RCTCM, or does RCTCM still remain at RCTCM, and there's parts that we know that would succeed better in a career pathway building? So I think there's a lot of discussion on curriculum, and I wish, again, I had a clear answer, but I don't yet. But part of the reason we want to come out and talk to you all is to start to shape that vision together more. But we had to put a roadmap up there, and the roadmap was, how do I keep at least some high schools open so the impact on those high schools isn't as dramatic? Because otherwise, we're having a completely different discussion about literally closing 2 or 3 high schools. And that is, you think the magnet program is a hard discussion. That's not easy at all. And so even going to the Josie folks and talking to them about reinvestment into their school, we're talking about full reinvestment. I still have people that are fighting it. And I've kept a school there. And so it's a really hard discussion to have as far as a holistic discussion. From a singular point of view, I completely agree with you. For more holistic, it gets a little more complicated, but I want to make sure that we're having specific conversations with you all and going into your communities to have those, and exactly what we're going to do. And I promise you that. Because up here, I don't have as clear a message because we're not there yet.
And I mean, I know, and I mean, I love the presentation. It's good to get all these schools good, but to me, it seemed like you really can't answer our questions.
It's a tough one,
Everything
yeah.
gets redirected to the board. So
Yeah.
if there's any board members here, or
Yeah.
anybody who can answer our questions, that's the biggest thing, because I've been to a meeting, looked at, I mean, everything you could not answer. You just did the presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
But not one board member or anybody came and said, let me step up, let me address and say what we might do or what we're planning to do or what we're trying to do. Nobody has not did that. And like you said the
Sure.
meeting was in December 20th, I didn't hear about it. I mean,
Yeah.
we heard more about these meetings
Sure you would.
in the past
Yeah.
month. You had much of a bigger turnout.
Yeah, 'cause
So
we-
why did
yeah.
50 people show up in December? Maybe because we didn't get the memo and they didn't do the advertisement like they did here.
We need
But
to
y'all
do
about to
that.
make a board meeting
Yeah.
March 19th.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah, we need to get, because that early one, as much as we thought we did, we'd have to do better when we're not naming schools. Because it was easy to get people here. We named schools.
But you
Yeah,
didn't say
at the
anything
last one.
December 20th.
So for.
But it's
Oh, I'm
about
sorry.
schools.
I'm sorry. I thought, we thought we got it out. It was on the websites. We thought we did. We met with a community task force. We sent it out to principals. We did the best we could. Now, did we fall short? Apparently we did. And again, still working on that communications. We felt like we reached out to a lot of people. You're right. We didn't get a lot
I
of
mean, 'cause
turnout.
y'all reached out to a
But
lot
I
of
did
people
get,
this month, but not in
yeah,
December.
but I did get, I'm telling you, at that meeting, I got a bunch of Josie people because they're worried about their school. Every year they're worried about their school. And I'm sorry they have to worry about their school. So we did have a lot of those people because they're always active in it, not just when their school is mentioned. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to get more of those on board, and that's a plan now. That's a plan as we do more comprehensive planning, is to have more of those conversations so we're not missing those kind of meetings.
Okay.
And be
one
more
more
specific
thing,
to community.
when
Yes,
y'all
ma'am.
have these meetings, when y'all give this information to schools,
Mm-hmm.
like have teachers or principals pass out flyers? Because I
Sure.
know back in the day when they used to have stuff like, and when my son was in elementary, they used to pass out flyers when they had meetings like this.
Yeah.
I have not seen that.
Okay.
I mean, and I've heard teachers were not allowed to even come to the meetings. Even
That-
though I
yeah.
have heard, I've seen some come.
If that's
but
the
some they
case-
said they was not allowed to
Oh.
even show up.
If that's the case, that hasn't been directed from this district office, that's for sure.
Right, well, they need to address that because teachers have said they were not
Okay,
allowed to
they,
show up.
they need to be here to hear this stuff because it affects them a lot. So we'll make sure that's clear though.
Okay.
If any teachers heard that, I'm sorry they've heard that because that does not come from this district office at all. So thanks for that.
Thank
And
you.
thanks again for being here again.
Hello, my name is Monique Braswell.
Hi, Monique.
It's a few things I want to address, Tracy. Because I'm sitting here and I'm listening to everything. I've watched every meeting online, parents, teacher. I have been a part of this process since day one. When they hired this man, they put a whole team of people together. At least 200 people were invited to be a part of this entire process, okay? They did not hide this under no circumstances. And I'm gonna say this to you all. We have never, and there's board members in here that have been on the board for a long time, been as transparent as they are being right now. And I can promise you that. I've been going against these board members in these meetings for years. What this team is sitting here doing is something that we have never had done in our district. Them being upfront and honest. Them trying to make us be a part of something, because that's what they're trying to do. And I'm thinking in my head, just maybe because they've never been this transparent and honest with us as parents, we don't know how to accept it nor take it, okay? And I'm just being really, really honest, because when this school opened, I was here. I have a child in this school right now. The new middle school opened, I was a part of that process, naming the school and all the things and all of that. TCM, understand me, TCM parents, me personally, I am the first parent that stepped in TCM. My kids' first graduating class of TCM. I had 2 children there. 2016 was the first graduating class. I had 1 child graduate number 27 and 1 child graduate number 98 out of 99. Okay, there was no testing. And that school was opened up to be a magnet school. They started testing in that school the 3rd year. Why? Because we wanted to get enough children in there for what the programs that they were offering. I'm sitting here listening to people say not so nice things about Josie. Some of y'all came out of Josie and you know it, okay? To not want your kids to mix, and I'm talking to magnet school parents because I'm a magnet school parent, to not want your kids to mix with kids from Josie. Do y'all understand what literally came out of Josie? Judges, doctors, lawyers, senators, principals, superintendents, board members. This is so unfair. School is supposed to be about every child, not just your child. If that's the case, I wouldn't care about nothing, but I care about all of you all's children, every single one of y'all kids. You better not come to me and tell me that anything going on with your child. And I'm going to leave it right there because I'm getting a little nervous. I'm a little frustrated, but they did not hide this process. This is hard for everybody. This is hard for my kid. This is hard for you all's kid, but it's the hardest for this man sitting right here who has brought nothing but straight transparency to us. But because for me, 20 years, we did not have transparency. And ma'am, you said, somebody in the room said you've already made your decision, they've already made their decision. I'm gonna tell you this, they have not made that decision. No, I'm not in the executive meetings, but with all of this that went on, that man right there and that lady right there, and where what to go? And I'm talking about you, Helen. They have some decisions to make. This is one time we do not have the right to say that they've already made up their mind as to what they have to do. They're listening. They are definitely listening to you all. I could see it in every one of their faces, because just like I'm fussing right now, I fuss at them the same way. This is not a decision that has been made. What we're used to is them standing in front of us after they've already made the decision of what they're gonna do and act as if what we say means something. 20 years, what we said didn't mean anything to them. Today, it means something. And I'm gonna stand on that. I'm gonna stand on that. They are being fully transparent. When they say they have not made the decision, they have not made the decision. And what else they're doing, them not speaking, they're doing something they hadn't did in 20 years. They listening to what we have to say. They are listening to what we have to say. So take this opportunity to understand changes are coming. We asked the young girls to stop making babies. They done stopped making babies. Now we want them to make some more. Teenage pregnancy was all the way up here. Now it's all the way down here, you know? 40 and under ain't making kids no more. They doing what we asked them to do, you know? So at this point here, y'all, I think that you all are doing a great job. I've watched y'all get beat up for the last 7 days online because I won't come in to help y'all. But Dr. Bradshaw, I need you to just look me in my face because I'm going to say this again. You are doing an excellent job. We've never had the transparency that you and your entire team is bringing. That program that y'all are implementing over at T.W. Josie is the way it's supposed to be. The Marion Barnes Center, everybody talking about the magnet schools. Where the money is at T.W. Josie right now. The plumbing, the carpeting, all of that. On a national level, they saying, y'all don't even gotta go to college. Because at 18, you could be making $50,000 in plumbing. How many of y'all gonna want y'all kids to go there then? Okay? And I'm done, because I'm just rambling now. You're welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Richter, for your presentation.
Thank you.
It was very informative. It was full of a lot of data. I've come to a lot of these meetings, and I've had a lot of questions. Some of my questions have not been answered.
Okay.
I've actually spoke to someone today at the Richmond County school system, and I voiced a lot of my concerns. Okay. And I am going to voice some of those here today. I am not a parent with children, but I care about people, and I care about this community. I do understand, and I support the fact that the top priority is providing our students leading edge education, first class education. I heard earlier in this presentation, or when you were introduced, that your firm is an educational consulting, an educational expert consulting firm. That is not true. You are a facilities consulting firm. With decisions like this, in my viewpoint, this should be a collaborative consulting activity where you have an educational consulting firm expert, where a facilities person should be a part of that team. You have a cross-functional team that have a lot of experts that collaborate to come up with the plan. So I see you only have one recommendation. I don't see any other alternative options that the board could consider. So if they vote against this plan for 2024, then they have no other alternatives but to, like you said the other day, to push out the build date of Langford High School. That is not a good alternative plan, in my opinion. To me, there should be other options of, okay, if you don't vote on this recommendation, these are other options that you have. These are the pros and cons. Yes, we made this recommendation. This is the reasons why we made this recommendation. But there are other good options as well. They might not be the 5-star option, but it's the 4.8 option. So I'm very disheartened that that was not a part of the process. If it was, please inform me of that, and I will stand corrected. So I'm gonna pause right there.
Okay, two things there. So first of all, I've been doing this for 25 years as an educational facilities planner. I owned my own firm for almost 20 years as an educational facilities planner, not a construction guy, not a facilities guy. I retired from that, took a year, went back to this firm who has deep roots in how to do good facilities, schedules, cost estimating, all those things. We also work with a program manager here that has specialties in buildings. So I am an educational facilities planner. We just happen to have a specialty in my firm. I've been doing this for 25 years, owned my own firm for 20 of that, doing educational facilities planning. So I just want to be clear on that. Okay,
you said the key word, facilities.
That's what
We're talking about funding and educational programs, which facilities are a component of that.
I'm just letting you know that I was a middle school teacher, so I'm an educator
That's
first.
Great. Okay.
So I'm an educator first. I came into this world as an educator,
okay.
Not as a demographer, not as a facilities guy. I came in as an educator, getting education aligned with facilities.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
so
great.
just so we know that, and just so we're clear, and my company does those other things, certainly. And I'll be fully transparent about that.
I mean,
certainly.
I looked at the website.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. That's part of, we have
your-
different specialties in what we do.
Your consulting firm
We
does,
have subject
and I
matter-
did not see anything about education. I
Okay.
saw construction, program management, project management. That's what I saw.
So Yeah, you have to, there is in there what we talk about.
Okay,
when we
I'll
talk
go
about
back
that.
and
Okay,
review.
and that's
I'll
fine.
stand, if I
That's
stand
fine.
corrected,
And
I
it might
do
not, look, it
apologize
might
for
not
that.
be as specific to my career in that.
Okay.
Okay,
All
but
right.
that's what I've done, okay?
Okay,
So
let's
from
talk
that
about more.
perspective
Okay.
then, the next piece was about Plan Bs.
Yes, sir.
Well, absolutely, we've met with the board several times over this process too. We've updated
What are
them and
they?
keeping them. Oh, for Langford? Well, for Langford, it's pretty simple. That you could leave the Copeland kids over in that boundary. That's not a good one because that overcrowds the school. Then we said you could delay. A plan B is that you could delay. The plan B also is that you continue, what we've told the board is that you continue to, if you want to leave the buildings open, you can continue to do that, but you're still going to stretch your program. So your plan B is, what programs do you not want in your buildings anymore? So those are plan Bs. Absolutely, those are plan Bs. Langford, there's probably a B and a C. And the B and the C is that don't consolidate, keep the boundaries the way they are, overcrowd the school, because that's an option. You can overcrowd the school all day long, or you can delay construction a year, and that's up to them. If they don't want to consolidate the building, I think it's a good option to say, okay, delay a year. If they're uncomfortable with consolidating those two populations, that is a plan B for them, and I think that's a good one. Now, there are other alternative plans, and even in the long-range plan, again, one of the reasons it's a longer-range plan is to have more community conversations about how we pivot into those other ones. So is there a backup plan to ARJ moving over? Absolutely. Then what that means is that we have to look at, and in part of our options development, we actually got this district to 5 boundary high schools and kept your magnets. So yeah, there's a plan B, close 3 high schools. That's not an easy discussion to have. Absolutely not. And so, but we don't think that's an option that you should just throw out to the community. Imagine that happen. We're already facing a lot. And so there are things that we want to think about in the background. And the board is aware of that. The board has seen that. Now, the first thing that we came into the district, we call options development, specifically that, is I showed them a 5 high school plan.
Can we see those
Nobody
options
liked it.
as a community, please?
Part of it is that we're not going to go to 3 high. We're not going to go down to 3 less high schools. This community doesn't want it.
Do you have alternative plans that take you down to 3 high schools? If that's your goal, you should have alternative plans that takes you down to 3 high schools, middle schools, whatever. You should have alternate, in my opinion.
Well, I think that we need to have more discussion over that over the next. And that's the reason it's a 5-year plan. That's the reason we don't want to do like a 1-year plan like we have been doing. Part of it is just getting readjusted into this process to have that ongoing conversation. Because guess what? We are going to pivot because we have to. I agree. Yeah, we might find. Let's say that the federal administration comes in and we get the new plant here on forwarding our energy. We're going to have to reevaluate the programs that we have to serve a building like that. So I think that it is not, we're not there yet because we can't be there. We just started this thing. And now we have an opportunity to be in front of it. Now,
I get you.
And so we did have to prioritize this year's stuff because the board does have to make some decisions. I don't think there's anything set in stone for the next round. And so I have the same concerns on some of these.
Okay, gotcha. So with some of your alternative plans, there could be a different mix of how you're consolidating certain schools, where you're moving certain schools. I personally would like to see some options that show that, just in case the board does not support your decision that's going to happen on March 19th. We don't have a date for the 2025 through 2028 decision date. That would be nice to know when that's going to happen so that we can have more, as a community, could have more input. Something else I saw on the presentation was that preserving history is important. And I agree with that. So what I want to know is what is being done to preserve the history of some of the schools here in Richmond County.
Okay, let me give you one example, and it's a real example of the Tut Langford kind of situation. So tomorrow at noon, we're going to meet with the Tut Alumni Association to talk about the legacy of the Tut name and how we get the next school with the Tut name on it, and the things that need to come forward from that building that we could incorporate in the design of the new building, trying to keep the legacy of Tut alive into a new facility. So that's one way we can do that.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a great first step in that. I think that when the design professionals are doing these new buildings, They should invite those stakeholders in to have those conversations, and so that's what we're doing with this group. I also think that, one of the things about a big conversation around Josie was about that legacy and the history of that area and that school in particular, is keeping that one alive to make sure that we're preserving that. I think that was a big part of our discussion for Josie. And that, look, there are some out there that are contrary to that. I mean, I think that happens. But I also want to make sure that where we can preserve that legacy, we should. I don't think we should trade, and I don't think you do from your earlier comments, I don't think we trade progress of program for legacy. I think you draw the line somewhere.
I agree. I think you can have a balance.
I think you can have a balance. That's what we think too.
You can have a balance, and you should have a balance, in my humble opinion.
I can't disagree with
And
that.
so I personally would like to talk about C.T. Walker, but I'm not going to take up the community's time here. So I would like to talk to someone offline about preservation of history, specifically C.T. Walker and Augustus R. Johnson. And again, like I said, I know that the education for our students, having a quality education, is the utmost and the top priority that we're trying to achieve here. However, even though buildings, history, and school culture and interactions are a lower priority, it does matter.
Okay, thank you.
And so these things must be considered when you're defining and proposing a solution and recommendation. So again, I appreciate your presentation. I've combed through it thoroughly. I've sent a thorough email to a staff member, and I would like to continue to engage with our board and help out any way that I can as a community member. I'm ready to be engaged and involved if you would allow me to. So thank you for your time.
So thank you. I've seen you at every meeting, so thanks. You have been at every meeting I've seen you. We do have a community task force that we're going to continue. That's been part of this from the beginning.
Okay.
If you think you could be a part of that.
I would love to.
I mean, I think that's part of this too. So we would love to have your input on that because I think it's important.
Okay.
And to get all those perspectives.
Okay,
So,
thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
So it looks like that was our last question of the evening, even though we have a late comer. Come on ahead, man. We'll squeeze you in. We know long meetings. We're good with long meetings. We know your questions. We've heard them 5 times already. It's okay.
She's always coming in with something good, though.
Notice I always come to the end, say the best for last.
Well, yes, ma'am.
Joe Kimball's my name, for those people that may not know it. I have attended every meeting that was a public meeting, and I had the opportunity to be at C.T. Walker the other day, and my heart bleeds for you, but I warned you. But anyway, I wanted to just make a comment, a statement, and it's not really a question per se, because you and I have talked about some things. And I've spoken to Dr. Bradshaw as well. And as an educator, as a grandparent, as a mother, and as a citizen that love children and love education, I have listened and I've attended and given the 5-year plan. I would like to make a recommendation that possibly to set aside the magnet schools, enhance each magnet school, make them better than what they are now, so that when people look on a website for Richmond County, Augusta, Georgia, because I'm here to tell you, I'm not just some country bumpkin, because I have been places, I've seen places, and I've talked to people, and I've taught in places. Augusta is rich in more ways than you ever will know. We tear down buildings, and people go like, well, where do we have to tour? Well, that's because you don't have nothing to show, because you tear it all down. And yes, history has a place. History is every day. Once that clock passes, it's history. It's just history. We're all a part of history. How we do with that history is what we decide tonight or whenever it comes. It's going to be our history. But how we look at it as personally, for me, I love Josie. I went to Laney High School. And that's our rivalry. But I tell you what, let Josie play anybody else other than Laney. We are going to be Josieites for that night. West Side, Richmond, the same thing. Glen Hills and Butler, the same thing. Cross Creek and Hepzibah, the same thing. But we are one unit. Richmond County needs to be a unit that includes everybody. And we should not, as one lady said, wait to the last minute. So this is our opportunity to fix what is wrong. And I would like to see myself as a child that was in segregation schools see it done the right way. People have died. People have taught us over the years how to be strong, how to be one unit. I had a friend that came from Fort Gordon and said, Augusta is very integrated. It is not a segregated community. Because what he was seeing was how the communities not only had black and white living in the same neighborhood, he was just like, huh? What is this? The towns, the big cities you see, you don't see that. When you go in Augusta, you can't say, well, oh, white person stay there, black person. No, they're like this. The community I grew up with, we had black and white people. Different vast culture. They weren't rich people. They weren't really poor either, but we were people. But at the end of the day, your neighbor is your neighbor, somebody you can trust. Who can you trust? How far are you willing to go and take the challenge on? If you're serious, I'm going to say it one more time. If you're really, really serious and love this city and love the communities and the children that's in this city, because the outlanding counties, what we do will set the tone for what is going to happen to Augusta from now on until Ben's end. My mother's dead to this day, and she said her words. The year of 2025, people won't have properties. There are a lot of things that's coming down, and that's true. People tell me I'm crazy, but then when they see what happened, they say, how do you know? I just know. You need to stop and really think about what's taking place. My recommendation, once again, the magnet schools need to leave those alone, enhance those schools, make them what people really going to run to Augusta for, because they were placed specifically where they are because of what is in their location. Those schools are made to be where they are. TCM is made to be where it is for what's next door and the children that are there. I don't know how many people know this, but T.W. Joseph used to be, backside of that school used to have the vocational Augusta Tech. That's where it was originally. So it grew to what it is now, to out here on Lumpkin Road. Vocational Tech for the state of the art for Josie High School and that community would mean a lot. It would mean a great deal. And for people to stop saying their neighborhood is better than anybody else. I tell people I live in Westlake. They look at me, what? I don't live in Westlake. I live on Laney Walker. But it is my Westlake. And if I want it to be my Westlake, I got to act like it's my Westlake. And you all need to think the same thing. Your community depends on you. You decide what it's going to be. And I'm going to leave this challenge to you. Do you want a community divided, or you want one to stand? And your children that come to school every day to get a hug that they may not get in the house, those teachers are doing that. Some of them are afraid to say anything. There are teachers that have given me questions to ask because they're afraid that they may get in trouble. I'm not afraid. If that's what it's going to take, then I will ask the questions. But I want you to think twice before you start making decisions that's going to affect everybody, not only the little child, but it's going to affect the grown person that put their head on the table at the night to say, God help me to wake up the next morning. Will I feel the same way? You all need to think about it. And this is not in disrespect for anybody else, because Richmond County does have a good school system. It does. But you have to make it so and stop having a reputation of thinking one thing is better than the other. We all come together as one. What happens in the elementary school happens in all the schools. So what's on the bottom comes to the top. So if you want your elementary school to be the best, then be the best. My grandmother said, I'm not telling you not to be anything, but if you're going to do it, be the best. You're going to be the best robber. I don't want you being a bank robber. But if you're going to be the best, be the best. Richmond County can be the best. And I want you all to prove that we can be the best. Because we are the envious of the counties around us. They watch what we do. And they set their plans based on what Richmond County does. I need you to wake up, Richmond County. I need it now. Augusta, Richmond County, Georgia. I need you to wake up now. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your words. A couple things that I wanted to share as we're closing this out. First of all, on behalf of Dr. Bradshaw and the Board of Education, we'd like to thank all the parents, all the teachers, all the comments, all the questions that we've started not only in the first week of March, but even back in December. This whole process have been transparent. Again, we'll remind you, RCBOE.org if you'd like to get the video, if you'd like to get the presentation. I'll remind you again, also the last public meeting will be tomorrow, 3 p.m. at the central office. This taping you can find within the next 48 hours on Next Era EDU in its completion, along with every other meeting. And we will also share this. We will take any questions. Nobody has been shut out. We have stayed as long as we've need to. In some meetings, we've even stayed for 3.5 hours. And if we need to do that again, I'm sure all these folks will do that again, because none of these folks are taking this lightly. So if you hear from somebody in the community saying that they're scared to talk, please tell them that that's not true. Please tell them that nobody in this board is telling them not to speak out, whether they're a teacher, a parent, whether they have a child in the school system or not. That's the purpose of this. And we will also share with you, if you see anything that's not from RCBOE.org with that official stamp and from that website, I can tell you right now, that is not the source. People are trying to scare you, and they're trying to manipulate the facts, and they're trying to distort them. The real stuff you've seen tonight, you've seen in the last meetings, you'll see again tomorrow at 3 p.m. On the 19th, the board will make a vote only on this upcoming school year. If you're wondering what has affected this upcoming school year and it didn't make it clear, the first clue you can look at is that list. It's either those schools or the schools that are feeding into those schools, or vice versa. That will be the first batch. If you have any additional questions, you'll see transportation, special education, teaching and learning, human resources. The central office will be here. Tracy and his team will be here. And if you'd like to do the school locator, where you can type in your specific address to start seeing when or if this will affect you, we'll be glad to do it. Thank you and have a good evening.